Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
When you're diving into the soul of an iconic rock star, you got to get a little unique. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I am going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are listening, keep listening and subscribe. The old subscribe button gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, I know we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, or X as it were, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Instagram, the Threads, the Blue Sky. I lose track, there's too many. But we're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. On this very beautiful episode, we are diving deep into the soul of a rock star with Bono's Stories to Surrender, which is an Apple original film and is streaming now on Apple TV Plus. And it's the story of Bono, who shares life stories and U2 songs in an intimate show exploring relationships with family, friends, and his faith. It features unseen footage from his Beacon Theatre performances of Stories of Surrender. It's directed by Andrew Dominik, and it really is a unique piece of performance art that I got wrapped up into. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. But I mean, we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the Emmy-nominated cinematographer of this shoot, the one and only Erik Messerschmidt. And this guy's been shooting for a lot of people. He shoots for David Fincher. He shoots for Michael Mann. He's Ridley Scott. He's a DP on the rise, and I mean he's a talented guy. And I talked about his work with director Andrew Dominik, sort of staging, what came first, the chicken or the egg, how he managed to sort of work around Bono in terms of presenting the show, because they do a lot of unique creative choices in this that really sort of get into the psyche of Bono, which I think the purpose of this whole show was, and they do a really good job with it. But like I said, if you like Bono, if you like U2, you'll get a kick out of this. It's on Apple TV Plus now. It's called Bono Stories of Surrender. But first, enjoy our talk with the Emmy-nominated Erik Messerschmidt about working on this project, working on so many others, including some big ones coming up, and so very much more. It was a great talk, and I hope you enjoy it, because I know I did. But I mean, Erik, obviously, first off, just thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it, and just congrats on the nomination and the work on Bono. I mean, this magnificent tale of Bono, as it were.
Thank you.
Now, this might be a loaded question, but I mean, I'm kind of curious because does the stage show come first and then you get hired, or do you get hired and then they design the stage show? Because you're on his back and you're in his face a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, no, what the truth is, the show was designed well before we were involved. It was something that Bono had done, had been working on. The staging, the staging of the show and the theatrical staging of the show was primarily designed by Willie Williams, who has been working with Bono forever. And it was, it's very simple. If you go see the traditional stage show of Bono Stories of Surrender, it's a very very simple, in a beautiful way, but it's a very simple set of staging. It's table, chairs, and some projection. And then when Andrew and I got involved, Andrew Dominik, the director, really felt like he wanted the movie to have a slightly different aesthetic than the stage show, and Bono agreed. So we wanted to play with the dichotomy between the sort of spoken word elements of the performance against the stage performances, the songs, so to speak, um, and we felt like introducing some sort of lighting element with that would help bridge the gap between those two storylines. So that portion of the show only exists in the movie version.
How much? I mean, I guess how much of is it movie versus stage? Because it feels like just in watching it, it's like 80-20 or 70-30. Just because I mean, you can tell when you're kind of cutting away and it's just him, and when you cut back to the stage, it's like okay, obviously you're with the crowd. Like how much of that? Like what was sort of the ratio of that?
Well, it's all done on the stage. Um,
I mean, well, in front of
the
a crowd, I mean.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's we I think we shot with the full crowd maybe 2 days of the movie. We did a lot of production, a lot of photography just with Bono himself. And part of that was motivated by the story is so personal. We felt like the camera really needs to be in his face. It needs to be intimate with him. He's talking about his father. He's talking about his life. He's, in some ways, he's sort of performing for himself, I think. And so it felt like if we were just restricted to the way you can photograph a stage show when there's an audience, in other words, the cameras are pushed back so the audience can see, and they're on longer lenses, and that we wouldn't capture that in the same way that we felt was important. So the idea is sort of to always hint that the audience is there behind the camera, but that the camera is very intimate with him when we thought it was appropriate.
No, 100%. And I mean, there was some creative choices in this, just from a visual standpoint, that I absolutely loved. I mean, not just the black and white, which obviously you have a lot of experience shooting in, but sort of the idea of shooting from behind him and being
Mm-hmm.
on stage with all these spotlights in your face. I can imagine, from a technical standpoint, that's probably a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, we built a set of lenses for the movie that exaggerate a lot of the flares, and we wanted that the kind of razzle dazzle of show business to be a part of it. I mean, Bono was a rock star, and the his life from the perspective of a rock star, I think, is thematically a huge part of the movie. Um, so yeah, and that's a thing that that's an experience I think most of us don't have, is sort of standing on the stage and looking out at the crowd and
Right.
seeing, feeling the lights. And it's actually, when you're in the audience and you look back, you can look around, you see everybody smiling, and you can see everybody react. The truth is, when you're on the stage with all the lights in your face, it's very difficult to recognize the crowd. Actually, they sort of fade into blackness, especially if there's smoke in the theater. So it's it can be quite a lonely place, I think, on the stage, and that's also part of celebrity, in a way. You're sort of, even though you're a very public person, you're also a bit isolated.
No,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
How difficult was it for Andrew, and I mean even you, just in terms of shooting it, to really direct something which feels so very improvisational and conversational? It's like you don't want to sort of manufacture sort of the genuine energy that he's trying to put across. You kind of want to stay out of the way, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of documentary filmmaking anyway. Um, it's the it's the movie, I think, bridges a gap between vanity and honesty in a way. I mean, that is the great struggle of celebrity, I think. Um, and we really wanted, Bono is very comfortable, and I think part of this, for him, the show is there's a cathartic aspect to performing this show and writing the book, and him trying to express the audience where he's from and how he came about. So we didn't give him very much direction. I mean, he's very conscious of where he is on the stage and where he's looking, and he understands how, he's been photographed more than anybody, so he knows how he looks, and he knows when he looks great. He knows when he looks, he knows his best side, all that stuff. Which, of course, we want to be cognizant of. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a part of it where in this type of production, we can do takes. We can do another take and say, Andrew could say, um, uh, give me one that's more timid, or give me one that's more forceful, or give me, let's try it like this. And we did do some of that, because there's all sorts of different tonal aspects that you can apply to the spoken word part of the performance, I think. Um, so there's a bit of that, and Bono would watch the takes back, but more or less, he had performed the show so much by the time we were involved, they gave a pretty good idea of what it was and where he wanted it to be, and that's a huge element of it. I mean, we're really just trying to stay out of the way, I think, to use your words, in a large respect, and I think that's part of it, documentary anyway.
For sure, for sure. No, I mean, I gotta ask. I don't think this gives away too much because I mean, again, it's a documentary, but there's this grandiose shot at the end where you're with him and there's this sort of operatic build and it transitions from black and white to color with this big crowd as opposed to sort of the smaller venue that we kind of see before. Like, what was the sort of the artistic decisions behind sort of that, I guess maybe sort of dramatic swell, if that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a crescendo aspect to it for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I think the movie references opera a lot. It talks about Bono talks about his father's relationship with opera. He talks about his father's disappointment that he didn't think he was a better singer, that he didn't think he was a proper tenor. He talks about Pavarotti. He talks about the experience of Pavarotti. He talks about his respect for Pavarotti and the rest of the band's disinterest. There's all the sort of opera references, and I think part of that is the acknowledgement that opera is the sort of is the suit and tie version of rock and roll.
Right, right,
It's
right.
you know and if you're a rock and roll star, you can't be, they don't coexist. They're mutually exclusive ideas. And I think Bono's also, he's considering his life as an opera. He's considering the kind of, um, all of those parallels of life as a grandiose celebrity, as it pertains to opera. So I think that part of the movie, the idea that, okay, well, maybe he sings an opera at the end. He sings La Traviata at the end of the movie, which is a bit of proving to his father that he can do it, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and and we did it, in the Teatro San Marco in Naples, and Andrew felt like he wanted to. It's, I think, really at that point in the movie, it's Bono was saying to his father, look, I can do what you said I never could do.
Right.
And it's really, I think it's an effort to punctuate that a bit, and the movie, as the black and white portion of the film, I think takes, um, it 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 is very much stylized intentionally as a way to separate itself from reality.
Yeah.
It is by intention, a very specific type of black and white photography and a very specific type of staging for black and white photography that that makes it a bit about spectacle, but also is really about isolation. And then you get to the end, and the movie switches to color, and you're brought into air quotes reality, of completely changing gears, which was just something I think we wanted to explore. I don't know. You'll have to tell me whether or not it worked, but it was certainly
No, I
something
think
we
it
were
did.
just
I
playing
think it
with.
did.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good, yeah.
Now, I mean, this is a loaded question, but I got to ask it because obviously this is such a gorgeous piece and it's got this real cinematic feel to it. But you've been nominated for an Emmy. It almost feels like it's like, oh, this is great. People love us, but okay, it's an Emmy. It's not necessarily the movie version of what I want. Like how, like walk me through the initial reaction of sort of the team getting recognized for the work on this.
Well, we're really proud of it. It's great to be recognized. It's a lovely thing. I don't have an Emmy, so that would be really cool. Um, I mean, I certainly don't make the work for awards.
Right, right.
That's not why I do any of it. But I'm really proud of the crew. The movie was not easy to make. And it's a really nice thing. It was a surprise. The category we're in, is, I don't really understand, to be honest, how the distribution of awards for
Right, right, right,
Emmys.
right.
But no, it's a lovely thing, and I'm gonna go. My wife is gonna go with me. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and it'll be it's exciting.
No, I mean, I gotta ask, I'm curious because I mean, from Andrew to Michael to David, I mean, you've worked with some pretty amazing directors, I mean, and are currently right now. And I mean, I'm curious, How does each job and each shoot kind of inform you going forward into the next one? Because I've got to imagine when you get the chance to sort of shoot for guys like Michael Mann and David Fincher, it's a bit of a different experience than say coming on for a one-off of a TV show or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly seek out um, directors with a specific point of view. I
Yeah.
think, I like, I, I have my techniques and I have my ways of seeing the world in terms of how I think that scenes should be constructed, or how I think that things should be lit, or how, um, or how I think the camera should be directed. But, I love to get thrown into the mix with a director who has a point of view and an aesthetic and a methodology to how they make their movies, and I think one of the beautiful things about filmmaking, and certainly one of the most beautiful things about being a cinematographer, is recognizing that there are many different ways to make a movie, and many different ways to cover a scene, and different ways to talk to an actor, and so my work with David Fincher, which is very specific, and we have a very specific um, shorthand, I think, at this point, certainly, um, is applicable to the next job in terms of what I learned and the mistakes I made and the struggles I had and the successes that we experienced, et cetera. But none of the other directors you mentioned work quite like David, and none of them work like Michael, and none of them work like Ridley, and so it's nice. I find kind of like you sort of start to fill your quiver with technique, that you learn, you pick up from certain directors, and or you get put in a situation where you have to solve a problem, and uh, the other things that you have up your sleeve maybe don't apply to this director because they want to shoot with six cameras and normally you would shoot with two or whatever, so it's just the process of learning, and it's really about supporting the director. I think ultimately, it's like I go in and it's like I view my job as someone first and foremost who's there to help them make their movie.
Yeah.
It's not my movie ever. It's their movie, and I have a point of view, and I have aesthetic sensibility, but ultimately it's like I'm there in a role of serving that director's interests, and that's the great joy of it, really.
How does the shorthand help the creative process? Because I mean, obviously, like you said, you're there to help them, and I can imagine there are jobs where it's like you're getting direction. I want to shoot it like XYZ, but I can imagine there's other times where it's like they're going to you and going, Eric, what do you think? How should we do this?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, that's a wonderful thing, when you're at a place where uh you can be honest with each other about your insecurities, about your choices. I think that is the creative process in the end. Ultimately, is are we doing the right thing? Is this decision, is this lens, is this staging position, is this lighting methodology, is this color palette, et cetera, is this supporting the movie or not, in terms of what we want to do. um the shorthand makes it more efficient. It makes the decisions easier if you have shared sensibility and you have an understanding of the movie you're making, um, before you start to make it. It makes all those decisions sort of reflexive. It's like I don't think that discovering what you're making on the set is really the right way to make a film. You sort of want to get, hopefully the majority of the prep process. I mean, there's a logistical part of the prep process of like, we're going to put the trucks over here and we're going to look this direction. We're going to pre-stage some lighting here, and all, that portion of the prep process and the scheduling and all that stuff is hugely important, obviously, for the entire crew and for the production. But really, um, it's the development of the ideas that we put together in terms of knowing, okay, when we're put in this situation, the sun is there and the light is here and the camera is here. Are we going to be good to go or not? Is this
Yeah.
supporting the idea? And that's really the shorthand I'm talking about, is like being able to look at each other and be like, yeah, we're good with this. Um, and that's with some directors, it's easier than others. And some directors, you develop it faster than others. It's about personality, I think, ultimately.
Love it. Love it. Now, I mean, just put a bow on this. And I mean, I've always found that when, the right director and the right cinematographer are in sync, it adds to such degree of just creating this environment in the world of the story that they're telling that you almost don't think about it. It just feels very organic and feel natural. And I'm kind of curious for you, as someone who's gotten into this business now, and I mean, obviously, we're all fans in this business. That's just the way it is. Like, what were the movies and sort of the moments early on where you kind of started to notice, wow, this is gorgeous, more than just sort of the story or what was happening? Like, this is really a fantastic piece of sort of art of cinema.
Oh well, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you're talking about movies that I've seen, like movies I'm fans of, or
Yeah,
movies that
like
I'm influenced
influences
by.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, there's movies that kind of approach the sublime for me.
Right,
Like
right, right.
Chinatown, for example, is a movie for me that is near perfect, or Alien is a movie for me that
Yeah.
is near perfect. That where you just look at it and you're like, man, they're firing on all cylinders here. You know, um, this movie or Close Encounters.
Yeah.
You know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, even. I mean, it's not for me. It's not even always about aesthetics. Like I think that there's to me, it's when the scene really works well.
Yeah.
Is the thing that is most interesting, and I think the hardest thing to pull off in filmmaking. When the scene just when it snaps together like a jigsaw puzzle, and
Right.
you're like that moment when you put a jigsaw puzzle back together and you put that last piece in and you sort of lean back and you admire the work.
Yeah.
That emotion is really the thing I'm always chasing when I'm making a movie with somebody. um, I kind of think like making something beautiful um, is not really that hard.
Right.
And I think people very much focus on beauty um, as a motivation. I think that the thing is like it's when the scene falls into place and the emotions of the characters connect with the audience and the the cuts are buttery and the staging is effective and it doesn't feel clunky and it feels natural and the lighting feels motivated and appropriate. um like Godfather 2 is a perfect
Yeah.
example of a movie that when you watch it, you're like, man, this movie is really made with intention, and it's really that to me is the goal. That's sort of like the nirvana that I'm always chasing. It's certainly not like, oh, look at all that beautiful backlight, or it's look at all the shafts of light in the smoke. That is just icing on the cake. That is actually pretty easy to implement if that's your priority. And that's just, I don't believe that should be the priority, because if you watch it and you're affected by the aesthetic before the emotion, or the aesthetic before the performance, to me that's like the great error of the cinematographer. That's like where you've made the biggest mistake, because you've taken the audience out of it.
No, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to wrap it up, and I mean, obviously, like you're working with David and Quentin now and Cliff Booth. I'm not looking for spoilers or anything like that, but I mean, I've got to ask because I can imagine having both those guys on set can be a dynamic that could take anybody sort of out of their focus. How do you kind of stay in the moment when you're working on scenes with guys like that?
Well, it's really about just doing the work. I mean, we all, on any environment like that, you show up and everyone's there to do the work,
Yeah.
and people take it very seriously. I certainly take it seriously, and I know the opportunity that I've been given, and I value it, and it's really about like, okay, you nose to the grindstone, let's go, guys. Let's just make it happen and figure out what we have to do to pull the scene off. I mean, I think that it's easy to worry about are my choices what they want or whatever. Fortunately with filmmakers like that, they are very vocal about what they like and what they don't like.
Right.
Which is the best way to work, in my opinion. And certainly, I mean, I've worked with David enough now where we know each other extremely well, I think, and we have a good sense for um judging, gauging whether or not either of us are happy with the work we're doing. I mean, it's when we're I get very emotionally distraught and upset when I'm doing bad work.
Right.
So it's, I'm good at judging the the weather vane of the work is easy to judge just based on my personality at any given moment. So anyway, yeah, no, it's I'm really excited about the movie, and we just started, and we've got quite a ways to go, but it's yeah, it's a pretty cool project. for
Well, you
sure.
know what, man? Just again, congrats on the work and the nomination with the work with Andrew and the nomination for this. Enjoy the ride of that, and I'll let you get some rest, man. Because as a fan, I'm dying to see the Adventures of Cliff Booth. So, but again, I just appreciate the time today. I really do.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, appreciate it. Of course, anytime.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.